that the nature of finite spirit is naturally for the all. And that naturalness has the character of the general thesis in natural resultance. That it's going to happen. Thomas uses the word natural resultance when he talks about the soul and the intellect. The soul is not the efficient cause of the intellect. And it's not the material cause, and it's not the exemplary, and so on. And he says it's a natural resultance. And Lonergan says this is a hint to another type of connection. Now this ties in with your question and with what I said earlier about the Trinity. Again, it's been 15 months brooding over this. The personalities in the Trinity are efficient together. So the operations that you have as a we with the Trinity are a twosome. I and they together. If you take in the notion of natural resultance, you can get another type of, you see, we haven't got a word, I was going to say effectiveness, that there's a Trinitarian presence that is not efficient, that there's a natural resultance, and that is, it's chemical, of the Father and the Son. I'm ahead of myself in my gestures here. The Father and the Son are in an identity in sanctifying grace, and then the Spirit in charity. And yet there's a sort of a presence of the twosome and the onesome in the lonesome. Now the discernment thing, you see, you have to keep the total future, the terminal value, in mind, in Eden, as your conscience is operating in the now. And that's an impossible task. Now, the question of, say, that you don't have comes up with the question of where are the dead? Hilaire Belloc was asked to write on the dead, and he didn't. He said, I have too much trouble dealing with the deadness of the living. But if you push the best we can at the moment on this thing of eye on the future, you find that the shift out of space-time is connected to space-time in some broader manner. The Spirit does not have the sufficient neurochemicality for what's called insight into phantasm. But what Thomas talks of in terms of a divine supplement, when he's talking about the knowledge of the separated soul, he has this little paragraph, which is very dodgy. You patch it together a little bit like Deus Ex Machina in Euripides. But it would seem that dynamically the separating spirit requires a genetic sequence of lights, or lightsomeness. It's called agent intellect in the normal literature, but this is a different type of activity of intellect, that there's a natural resultance. The human spirit is a spirit because of intelligence. That's Lonergan's definition of spirit, spiritual. The shift out of space-time, the conventional space-time, is a shift through a sequence, a genetic sequence of illuminations, that carries forward. I'm only sort of pushing my own theological efforts here. Is there a full adoption by the Father? One can speculate that the light would be too bright. You can't suddenly come out of a dark room and then 1,000-watt bulb. The human spirit has to have a convenient movement towards larger enlightenment, which becomes an everlasting sequence of surprises. And it seems to me plausible that to think of the last judgment as reaching a sufficiency of illumination to be actually adopted, to have the luminosity of the light of glory. So there's a whole theology of, where are the dead, and the peculiar linkage to the chemistry of this present cosmos, and the possibility that, or the likelihood, I would say, in that new sense, that this cosmos and its chemistry is part of the deal. I like to link that, and this will really put a twist on it, I like to link that to the section inside page 555, page 578 of the new edition, where Lonergan talks about the emergence of language. You have a word. It's an aggregate of chemical patterns. You have the sensed and you have the sense. And there's a triple correlation. Now suppose the dynamics of finitude is such that these three aggregates eventually coincide, and that somehow the word is internal to the sensed and the sensing. And then there's an aesthetics of the neurodynamic cosmos that is equivalent to, is a resurrection. But it's the circumcision of the entire cosmos in the circumcision of the divinity. And it's permanently incomplete. How incomplete is it? It's infinitely incomplete. You can't get halfway to the vision of God. And this all relates to your question of where are the dead, but you can see that this is a topic for serious contemplation. And for a sub-community that would focus on this. And these are the foundation persons. They're on the front line, they're in the Wimbledon of wisdom, pushing to get a glimpse of the distant future. And we don't have that at all. Karl Rahner, in his last lecture, he was my age, and he said, I know I'm going off, but it's a pity the theologians haven't thought about it. Well, it is. And it's an amazing tradition that the last person to think seriously about where the dead are is Thomas Aquinas.